from uh, from a recording that I made with the children in Stockholm and with Isabella. What was Isabella's last name? Isabella Sommerfeld, who has a beautiful voice with a very cool band. Yeah, it was not mixed well, so I don't flaunt it. It wasn't mixed properly at all, the whole recording, unfortunately. The guy who was doing the project kind of gave up on it. In any case, yeah. So here we are with chapter are we chapter 12, Proverbs 12. And in our ongoing search for wisdom in this world we live in, whether we're searching for wisdom on the TV set, as some people might have done, I wasn't particularly searching for wisdom last night, so I wasn't disappointed. And or whether we're searching for wisdom in Israel, Palestine right now, or anywhere else in the world. Somebody's got some background noise. If you've got the radio on in the background or somebody else, then perhaps mute yourselves. Okay. Are there any comments or questions as to last year? I don't ask the question that much because it's you know, they're bite-sized pieces, everything we're doing, so it's hard to necessarily remember things from one week to the next. But if there's something that somebody would like to bring up from last week. Okay. All right then. Always hard to find a title for these pages because they're disparate units. I can say that I can proudly say that I found one particular unit today that I can say from using the literary devices and the content that I can say confidently say that it's intended to be a unit. One of the others, I think thematically there's a unit, but anyway, that's kind of how I broke it down. I tried to break it down into smaller bite-sized pieces. If Megan, if you would, talk about a good man from your objective point of view.
My objective point of view, a good man. He who loves discipline loves knowledge. He who spurns reproof is a brutish man. A good man earns the favor of the Lord. A man of intrigues, his condemnation. A man cannot be established in wickedness, but the root of the righteous will not be shaken loose.
Hey, initial reactions. You agree that would be a good man?
That would be a good man, yeah.
A good person, of course.
A good person, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The last two lines sort of say that if you're bad, you're not destined to stay bad, but if you're good, you are destined to stay good.
I read it a little bit differently. I read it as if you're bad, you're not destined to survive or to last or to leave a legacy, whereas the righteous will. I don't think it's about a person in their own life. I think it's about their legacy. That would be my reading of this. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, it makes sense too. Yeah.
Or anything. Okay. Because reality teaches us differently, Les, doesn't it?
Right. That's why I found it interesting that
Right.
Yeah, I found it not to be true. Those last two sentences I found not to be necessarily true in my interpretation of it applying to a single person. Yes.
Right. And because some people's wickedness just gets better and better as they get older, right?
Or worse.
They get better at their wickedness, I mean, yeah. Okay. The Hebrew, ohev musar, ohev dat. the word musar, we've had it before. We had Shma b'ni musar avicha ve'al titosh torat imecha. It's one of the more famous phrases in um, speaking of famous phrases, Rabbi Marsha Tilchin was in touch and asked that I give a mini course this month in Proverbs, kind of a greatest hits thing. It will be going over some of the stuff that we've done. Some of you I know from the Jewish Collaborative of Orange County. That's how we met. Megan and I met that way, and perhaps others here as well. But I wanted to just to let you know what I'll be doing there is a little bit different. One of them will be like the greatest, the common, the influence that Proverbs has had on Jewish culture and Western culture by famous sayings, and one of them is the one I just quoted. Shema b'ni, listen, my son, to the musar, to the well. I don't think discipline is the right translation there, but to the ethics, say, or the maybe the discipline of your father, and don't let go of the teachings, the Torah of your mother. Here, of course, it's just most of the passages we have revolve around the masculine. There's nothing new there, but this idea of musar, some of you know, has been used in the last few decades more than it was for 100 years in the liberal Judaism. Musar is something that it's a genre of literature, Musar literature. It's Musar in modern Hebrew means ethics, in general it means ethics, but it really comes from the biblical, the earlier meanings have to do with discipline. In other words, you are educated through being disciplined. Through being bound, perhaps, and that's why discipline here is a good translation. It only dawned on me afterwards. I never really thought of, haven't given much thought to the fact that there are different disciplines that we learn academically, and what's the connection between a particular discipline that you learn at university and the word discipline that happens to you when you're a little child. I'm not sure what to do with that and the connection, but from a semantic point of view, they're certainly related, right? And the idea of the discipline, as far as that way of learning, the less pleasant, the stick as opposed to the carrot, that's in the background of this particular midrash from Midrash Tehillim. Dan, if you would read for us this long section and kind of break it down, you'll see where to pause.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
First,
go ahead.
in that case, doesn't discipline sort of being forced to stay on a track?
Absolutely.
Not you could say bound, but you're restricted either by yourself or by somebody else to be disciplined.
Right. But Musar is semantically is connected to being bound. Yeah, like the word asur. I'm pretty sure it's from Musar. I don't think so. Sasha's asking, and not from to pass over, like the word masoret, a tradition. I to pass on. I don't think so. I'm pretty sure it's from Yasar, and
Yeah,
Yasar. No, it's from
the
Yasar.
book
It's not
gives
from.
It
It's not
is
from
from
Asur, it's from
Yashar.
Yasar,
Yeah,
and
it's from
Yasar.
Yashar.
Not Yashar, but Yasar. Which,
Yes,
like,
because the Vav gives it away that it was the mem is the noun and the Vav gives it away that it was a yud.
yeah. So it's Yasar from like pain,
Mhm.
Isurim. Yeah. Okay. So maybe bound is not. Yeah, bound is not.
Is that where the word masorti comes from?
No, masorti is from masar, from mem samach resh, which has to do with to pass on. Masoret is tradition. Masorti movement is the Israeli translation of the conservative movement, because conservative wasn't a good description of what the movement was about. Yeah.
Then who established the way of Musar?
So you're talking about
is that the Hasids?
yeah, no. So the Musar movement
Mhm.
Way of Musar is something that came up in the 19th century, and it actually did not originate in Hasidic circles. It was in Misnagdish circles, the opposition to the Hasidim.
Mhm.
Um, Yisrael Salant is one of the major characters there. The only quote I know of his is something he said about a rabbi, a community rabbi, who is never complained about as obviously not doing his job, something like that. It's something I've championed over the years with my with complaints against me. I always was able to pull out that quote. Probably should have had it printed up on a little card or on my business card. Anyway, yeah, so the Muslim movement, and that became, and somebody told me once in one of our groups that they had trained somebody who just kind of, a few months beforehand got involved with us and told me that she was certified, trained as a Musar counselor now, whatever. And it amused me a little bit because it's a deep literature. It's not Kabbalah, it's not metaphysical. It's ethics literature. It's self-improvement. It's self-help in many
Mhm.
ways. But there's a darkness over it that I find. I don't find a joy involved. The Hasidic movement, which I'm not an expert in, as you know, is there's a lot more joy involved in looking at life and this idea of being stern and low key. Be humble is putting yourself down. I mean, there's a lot of challenges as far as character is concerned. Anyway, let's take a look and see what the Midrash Tilim. That's a rather long section about different kinds of people and their relationship with God and their understanding of what happens in their lives. Go ahead, Dan.
Another thing is what the scripture says: whoever loves discipline loves knowledge. There were four who were punished. One was punished and kicked. This was Job, who was punished and kicked. Likewise, it says in Job, let me know why you contend with me. Is it right for you to oppress me? I know that you have the power, and you do as you please. Again in Job, that the godless man should not reign, that there be no one to ensnare the people. This was punished and kicked. Okay. The second was punished and played with. This was Abraham, as it says in Genesis. Then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed and said in his heart, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? And why was Abraham similar to a king who swore to hit his son and said to him, my son, I have sworn to hit you? The son replied, the power is in your hand. He hit him and thought his son would say, enough. But once he hit him, the father said, enough, I hit him, I have hit him. Similarly, in Genesis, when Abraham was 99 years old, the Lord appealed to Abram and said to him, I am El Shaddai, walk before me and be blameless. I have hit him enough.
Okay, so these are it started in a more positive sense. I mean, the first one we understand, I think. This one is punished and kicked. In other words, there's no letting up. And the book of Job is a story about until you get to that very last chapter. There's no letting up, just disaster after disaster. It's like learning the lesson, rubbing it in, I would call. That's what I would call the first one is if this was punished and kicked, rubbing it in. Second was no, there's taking it, okay, I got punished. All right, so we can still but there's still some back and forth and understanding what I'm really gonna have a child, whatever. And then it goes, I don't know. I guess, yeah, I guess the secondary, I'm not going to keep rubbing it in. I hit him enough. He got hit. I hit him enough. I don't know. Not sure what to do. I found it an interesting tradition. But let's go ahead and read it to the end.
But before going on, what's
Sure.
the element of punishment Abraham is receiving? I'm not understanding that.
Because he had no children. He was promised children. He had no
Okay,
children until late, right? He was
okay,
he was given all these. He has a child. He's told to kill him. He said, "You have a land. You got to leave the land. There's famine in the land." I mean, the whole story of Abraham. We overlooked that part of it, but yeah, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
The third was punished and asked his beloved not to hit him. This is Hezekiah, as it says in Isaiah. And Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord and said, Rabbi Nathan said, he was also punished and kicked, as it says in Isaiah, wail, O gate, cry, O city, melt away, O Philistia, all of you. For smoke comes out of the north, and there's no straggler in his ranks. This tells us that his blows were as severe as those of Job. In Job it's written, my bones cling to my skin and to my flesh, and I have escaped by the skin of my teeth. And in Hezekiah it is written, I compose my soul as a weaned child, like a weaned child on its mother's lap, so is my soul within me. This tells us that even the skin of his teeth was taken away.
I'm not sure I understand the point of this one. It started out with a category. It feels to me a little bit like the whoever put this together had these four things in mind, but the proofs didn't really, lead to those conclusions. I'm not sure unless you want to elucidate. I mean, Dan, do you have an understanding for this, what you just read?
No, it's sorry. My first question is, gee, is there something in the translation that's leading us astray? Does it make more sense in the Hebrew? I don't know the Hebrew. But...
Yeah, I didn't look in the Hebrew. I admit I didn't delve down, but yeah, probably should have. So yeah, although you get these things. I'm looking. Go ahead.
Wasn't it Hezekiah that he prayed and he got 15 more years of life?
Yeah,
So maybe his punishment was when he was going to die, but that he was freed from his punishment because he got to live another 15 years.
right. So that part I understand. I get that part, but
Mhm.
what with the part afterwards though? And in the back, I guess the part afterwards to say no, that's not the case. I don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's going to my skin.
Is it more than one rabbi arguing with each other? I can't
Yes,
tell.
in this third paragraph, there's more than one rabbi. Yeah.
It sounds like they have a difference of opinion and we get to
Yeah.
watch it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's also the phrase that strikes me, the skin of his teeth, which is, again, is there some archaic usage don't know of? The only skin of his teeth reference I know of is I think it's a play by Thornton Wilder.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that just could be
But
it's an idiomatic
yeah, what does it?
I'll take a look just a second.
According to Google, it comes from Job 19:20, where Job says, I am escaped with the skin of my teeth.
Mhm.
Presumably meaning he got away really with nothing at all. Today, the phrase usually means a narrow escape.
Mhm.
I find it hard to believe that there's a phrase in Hebrew that says skin of my teeth. There must be some other kind of phraseology involved, no?
I just a minute, I'm looking at
Okay.
the Hebrew of the whole section. Okay. Now, by the way, the Hebrew in Job is Ba'or Shenai, the skin of my teeth, literally. I've escaped by the skin of my teeth. Yeah. Yeah. Look, we could delve into that particular expression and the other. It just let's not get stuck on this. It is going to take me too long to go back and to simultaneously read the whole thing, to do my own simultaneous translation. So let's take it this way. The first one has to do with being punished and kicked. The second one has to do with not letting up. The second one has to do with being punished, but the back and forth being played with. the last one is the opportunity not to get hit. I think to get to survive. In each one, it's surviving
Got a hit. Mhm.
a little bit less. And let's take a look at the fourth one, Dan.
Okay. The fourth said, "Why is the strap hanging? Direct me with it." This was David, as it says to David, "Judge me, O Lord." Likewise, Solomon says, "Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge." Oh, that's Proverbs. Yeah, just did. And David also says, "Blessed is the man whom you discipline, O Lord." Okay, so this whole thing is identifying discipline with punishment.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so using discipline in that second sense.
Yeah. So Job keeps getting kicked. Abraham is played with. Hezekiah gets out of it. And David and Solomon say, "Bring it on. Bring it on. We're gonna what do you need that strap for? Show me what you do with that strap. You know, kind of a thing.
Except for David, which I can understand why he was punished, are there reasons for the other people why they were punished, or were they just punished?
No, in Abraham, there's no reason why he was punished. Abraham, it's considered. Oh, I'm sorry. Sasha's asking, do we know why people are punished? No, there's no reason for Job to be punished, but other than to make an example of him. That's what the biblical book of Job is about, to talk about theology and why good people suffer. The story of Abraham is that's how you become a leader. That's all beginnings are difficult according to rabbinic understanding. Kol atchalot kashot. The beginning of the people is difficult. You've got to go through this process to reach a covenantal relationship with God. Hezekiah was kind of a mixed figure, right? Some good and some bad. Yeah. And then finally, David and Solomon, the point here is not to show that it's a punishment. It's I think it's more to show, like, how do I learn? How do teach me through that strap. Yeah, it's a little bit sadomasochistic, maybe. I don't know exactly. Okay, I'm sorry, maybe this was a little bit too unclear to bring in this context, but still interesting. Those of you that'll have questions about this, you can certainly follow up an email, and then I'll delve deeper into the Hebrew, which I should have done beforehand. Bring it on, punish me.
Yeah, well, it seems to me that a place where we started the discussion of the word discipline, what it means, I think the two different meanings we use it in English is key to the whole passage. That they're being, those two meanings are being identified somehow.
I mean, the learning and the suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, that would have been Greek at Hebrew University. I had to study ancient Greek. That would have been that I had never saw. That was the most suffering I ever did in any course in my life.
Since you bring that, because the other thing about the discipline is the word disciples, which must be, it's a New Testament word.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know that. Yeah, all really good questions to delve down. In the meantime, I'm sure Les is Googling connection between disciple and suffering. Okay. I don't know what the Greek is. I don't know what the relationship between apostle and disciple is either. Okay. Anything else?
I mean, there certainly is a connection between, violent punishment and religious sects, right?
But do you think that's what's being addressed here?
No, but that's where it may have come from.
Yeah.
I mean, people use scripture or sacred writings to justify a lot of things they do that not necessarily what it was meant to say.
Or could it be as simple as the child who gets the wrong answer when asked in class gets a smack across his knuckles?
Even by the nuns?
Or by the teachers, any teachers before, and nuns just preserving something that was an older practice, perhaps. Yeah, I see where you want to go. You want to go and still assign it to the religious fanaticism. Yeah, interesting. Okay.
For a sect of priests that used to like really kind of mutilate themselves as a discipline.
Hmm.
Early Christian priests.
Yeah, or yeah, different.
Flagellate, I guess is the
Yeah,
word.
yeah, different. Yeah, or Hasidei Ashkenaz, same kind
Do
of
they
thing.
do that?
There's no they now, 13th century, but there is a stream in Judaism as well. There is a custom to whip before Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, but it's symbolic. Um, I heard about that in yeshiva, not in the kind of yeshiva I went to, but in Haredi, ultra Orthodox yeshivot. I would imagine in the Misnagdish, in the Musar tradition, yeah. But I don't know a lot about this. I don't know. Anyway, still, I think what I'd like to go back and what I'm left with all this is the connection that I mentioned between discipline and discipline. Discipline of studying something, say Greek. I have the Greek discipline of knowing a little bit of ancient Greek and how hard it was to get there, or the classes I took, which were the most difficult that I suffered through, suffered and learned, as opposed to suffered and tuned out. Yeah, yeah,
I mean, we consider self-discipline to be an attribute to learning
yeah, yeah,
or dieting or whatever you're trying, whatever goal you're trying for.
yeah. Okay. Manny, you want to read the next section is I kind of did the thing that I found that ran through it, I felt for me was stability, which is also in the end of the previous section as well. But any case, stability. Go ahead, Manny.
A capable wife is a crown for her husband, but an incompetent one is like rot in his bones. The purposes of the righteous are justice, the schemes of the wicked are deceit. The words of the wicked are a deadly ambush, but the speech of the upright saves them. Overturn the wicked and they are gone, but the house of the righteous will endure. A man is commended according to his intelligence. A twisted mind is held up to contempt. Better to be lightly esteemed and have a servant than to put on airs and have no food.
Okay. So the last part is a little bit complicated. We'll get to that in a second. But overall, what are people struck with? What lights up for people?
Well, the first thing that lights up to me is that the first couplet, the first two verses, aren't like any the others, and they're not the attribute of a person. It's the attribute of the wife.
Unless you understand, as many ancients did, that the wife was just an extension of the person, the man. You may know, Dan, in Aramaic, in Talmudic Aramaic, the beito shel adam, the belonging to the house is an expression of a wife, another word for wife, one's house. Yeah. And maybe that comes into the Yiddish as well, of speaking of a woman as a balabuste. A balabuste literally means the owner.
Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so there's the familiar Eshet Chayil, at least for those that grew up in a traditional household, but that's not from here. That's from chapter 31, which I'm going to spend one of the weeks in with the JCO, with the Jewish Collaborative of Orange County. I'll be doing it with them. Eshet Chayil. It's part of verse 31. It's a late addition to the book, and so, but it's a term that we find in biblical Hebrew a little bit. Chayal means soldier. Chayil is already an adjective, and Isha is a woman. Eshet is the construct form. So literally, you might say it's a woman of, it could be a woman of a soldier, but it's really a woman of heroism, heroic woman. Here is a capable wife, a woman of valor is the translation that we grew up with, right, in chapter 31. Um, and the fact that she's a diadem or a crown for her husband, does that sound familiar? Well, the same words are used in the Chadodi, in the last verse. Boi b'shalom ateret bala, right? In the traditional text, and something I changed 20 years ago to ateret isha, not only because I was at the time doing lesbian weddings, but the woman, this metaphorical woman, becomes the crown of her wife. That's one way of reading it. Another one, the crown of her man, but not the crown of her master, which is Ateret Bala. But that makes sense in the biblical context, of course. And this competency and incompetent, and what that does for the person. So Dan, I think that is very much the point, right? A man, this is like the cookbook my mother had, The Way to a Man's Heart, right? She had a cookbook by that name. That's where I learned that phrase from. This is the behind every, Rita Claire has said before, I think behind every successful man, right? She goes back to that point, is a loving, supporting woman. This is another way of saying that idea. Which in it, yeah, okay. What else? It's kind of more of the same, right? Until we get to the end. The end is a little bit challenging, right? In the English, better to be lightly esteemed and to have a servant slash slave than to put on airs of being important but have no food. So it's all in appearances, right? And but it could be that that's not the text. Um, oh, works for himself. Oh, one way of understanding Tov nikle ve'eved lo. It's better to be lightly esteemed, less honored. The avadlo could be that he works for himself. That's one way of understanding this in the ancient versions, and not evidlo, and as opposed to him having a slave, that he works for himself. Another way is to amend this text to the avurlo, with it, instead of being ayin bet dalid, it's ayin bet resh, and resh and dalid get mixed up quite often, and that it has to do with that, and he has produce. It's better for a man it's better for a man to be less respected, but has produce, that is something to eat, as opposed to being very self-important, but has no food. And that way the parallel would work if it was over. So it's hard to know in this case what the text should read. All those are possible. I don't think any of us would be proud to say it's better to be less respected, but to at least have a slave, right? That's okay. Anything else on that section? But if we go with the va'avur, ibur, as in produce, then it could be that line is really part of the next section, which I isolated or defined, which seemed to me to be especially meant for farmers, the people of the earth, the men of the earth, men who work the land, the men that go out hunting, not the city folks so much, because it feels like that's where the symbolism is from that, the language is from that world. Eileen, you want to give it a try?
Sure.
10:14, top of the second page.
A righteous man knows the needs of his beast, but the compassion of the wicked is cruelty. He who tills his land shall have food in plenty, but he who pursues vanities is devoid of sense. The wicked covet the catch of evil men. The root of the righteous yields fruit. Sinful speech is a trap for the evil man, but the righteous escapes from trouble. A man gets his fill of good from the fruit of his speech. One is repaid in kind for one's deeds.
This hardworking relationship, but all the language is taken from the world of outdoors. If I go down using the Hebrew, behemto, from one's beast. The third line, the one who works the earth will have the one who works for it will have the bread to eat, the food to eat. Two lines down, the fact of the usage of matzod, and then two lines after that, mokesh, the words of traps that are used by hunters. Shorish, the root. And find the second to last line, mipri, from the fruit, the fruit of. So perhaps that's where this unit, at least that's a little thesis.
What what goes with Yitain? Shoresh, Sadakim.
So good point. Vishor tzadikim yitain. Some commentators understand that it's implied yitain pri, right? Shor tzadikim, the root of the righteous will yield.
Oh, okay.
Now, but it's not a good Hebrew, though. You are right in seeing there's something wrong. Other people understand it as that it needs emendation, that Vishor Tzadikim Eitan. There should be an olive that dropped out there, or
Right.
Eitan means that it survives, or it lasts. Yeah. Good eye. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? So the next unit was easier for me because I used that device of the keyword, a word which is not terribly common word, even though we've had it relatively a lot in the book of Proverbs, which makes sense because it's fool, the avil is a fool, and we have it at the beginning of the unit, at the end of the unit, as I showed, but also because all the things here have to do with what comes out of one's mouth. It's kind of like, it reminded me of, let's just go on. Rabbi Malka, 1523.
What comes out of his mouth? The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but the wise man accepts advice. A fool's vexation is known at once, but a clever man conceals his humiliation. He who testifies faithfully tells the truth, but a false witness deceit. There is blunt talk like sword thrusts, but the speech of the wise is healing. Truthful speech abides forever, a lying tongue but for a moment. Deceit is in the hands of those who plot evil. For those who plan good, there is joy. No harm befalls the righteous, but the wicked have their fill of misfortune. Lying speech is an abomination to the Lord, but those who act faithfully please him. A clever man conceals what he knows, but the mind of a dullard cries out folly.
Right. So folly is the same root from fool in English as well, but in evil in the beginning of the section and nivelet at the end. Reactions. What stands out?
No harm befalls the righteous.
Rita
We've
Claire?
had that theme before.
Yeah, that's very common. Rita Claire, I think you want to say something.
I was going to say something to that effect. So therefore, when people have misfortune, they think they've done something really wrong.
And that is the case, or that's not the case?
It's not the case. It's not the case.
Except for so where do you see it in the lines here?
It says here, no harm befalls the righteous. That
Okay.
line.
But the wicked have their fill of misfortune.
So
So
you have things that go wrong with you. So do you feel like you've done something really wicked?
yeah. Well, maybe the advice here is to start from the other end of it. If you're wicked, don't be surprised at your misfortune. And not if you have misfortune, then therefore you're wicked. I would start from the other side. But and that's all over the place in all the biblical literature, right? The good person that it's bad for him, the bad person it's good for them. The
Ever
quintessential,
seen the righteous forsaken?
yeah.
You read that?
Yeah, or tzaddik v'ralo, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, okay.
But a lot of people do feel that way. I remember going to a discussion with someone about insurance, and my husband was very ill at the time. And she said, "Oh," she said, when she heard what his illness was about, "You must have done something really bad in your life." Why she said that at that time, I have no idea. It was just stuck in my head. How awful that she said that. You must have done something really bad in your life to have gotten such misfortune. Wow.
And that does offend our sensibilities. But it's but those are that's very common in traditional societies everywhere around the world. Yeah, certainly to the modern time.
You know, when
Sean?
you know, I'd say when it says in reading this, I always take this where it says a lying, what am I reading? A lying tongue, oh, a a lying tongue is a moment. You know, a lying tongue abides forever. A lying tongue, but for a moment. It depends on how you define moment, though. And that's how I look at these things. A moment, you know, when you think about it in terms of a one lifetime, a moment could be like an hour, a minute, but it also could be a year or a century.
To me, the text I think is counter distinction between forever and not forever, fleeting, and it's the language, of course, is hyperbolic on purpose to make a point. And this is wishful thinking. I think what you're saying is at the moment, if things are lasting longer than what we would say as a moment, just a beat, then perhaps you have to redefine moment. Reminds me a little bit of the people that want to redefine the word day with the creation story because they can't you know, make it work with what they know about science. So one day must be 6 million years or whatever, you know, 60 million years, something, whatever.
Joan Hakamim, Mirafe.
Please say a little.
I'm sorry, the tongue of the wise is healing. I thought about that in relation to visiting the sick.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the reason that I bolded that one, that phrase caught my eye as well. I don't know that I've ever seen it before. Lashon chachamim merapeh. The wise words are healing. So Malka is reminded of visiting the sick. I might argue that sometimes when we visit the sick, we don't know what to do with ourselves, so we talk too much and we say silly things. You know, the quintessential Shiva visit when you're coming to comfort the mourners. And so how did he, you know, what did your father die from? And then they get in a half a sentence. Then whoever is comforting them goes on for an hour about when his father died, or you know those kind of things, or the needless speech that people talk about. And it's all a question of style. So, but people are looking for comforting words, that's for sure.
Sometimes silence is comforting, though, too.
Yeah, that's my own preference, Malka, you know, but sometimes people, they want to hear. People come to me all the time, they want to hear things. More often than not, of course, it's just a question of really what I think they want is to speak. They want to be listened to. Yes, Les.
So once again, and I think I mentioned it either last week or the week before, this passage or this chapter, whatever, goes back and forth between you should do this because it makes for a better life and society versus you should do this because if you don't, God's going to punish you. And it's sort of that going back and forth and that I find interesting and disturbing at the same time.
Well, yeah, and I guess the answer to me is always going to be the same time because they're totally interconnected in the ancient world, at least here, as opposed to maybe a different collection of proverbs that we might find in other literature, which I'm not an expert in, other ancient literature that might be more secular.
I mean, one question I have, and I have no background in this, but over the centuries, the rise of philosophical ethics, not based necessarily on religion, did it kind of sort of come up with another reason for being good and for benefiting society versus if you don't, you'll be punished by God? Is that sort of how that sort of evolved from primitive, God-fearing civilizations to kind of a self-discipline or imposed ethics?
Well, I don't know enough to make a judgment on that, but let's say that is the case. Where would you position the book of Proverbs then, Les?
Sort of back and forth.
Or in
Transition.
part of transitive. It's in a transitional pivoting stage. Yeah, that's how I understand it. Yeah. I don't know the history of altruism, for instance. I'm sure there have been books written about altruism. Where does one see that in different societies around the world? Yeah. So less, because I don't know if there's other MDs, you might be the only MD here, but Lashon Chachamim Merapeh. Well, any care to talk about any reactions to the fact that wise words have healing value, even though here it's symbolic language, it's a metaphor, I think. But is what part does speech and wise speech, as opposed to silly stuff, play in the healing process?
Well, first of all, the wise don't have a monopoly on wise speech. Number one. Number two, it's really empathy you're looking for. I think when you're trying to heal, that goes a long way rather than, in other words, telling how you suffered or what your experience with death was doesn't give empathy to somebody else. But just saying, if you must feel really hurt right now, and I'm so sorry, that's empathetic. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah. Sasha, what?
Emotion.
Sasha says emotional intelligence.
Right.
In other words, the healing, the wise, they're intelligent in the speech of emotionally intelligent people has the possibility of healing. Yeah.
I'm thinking now about the difference between a surgeon who often, has no bedside manner, not necessarily, again, I'm generalizing, stereotyping, no empathy, they're doing the job, let's get it done, here's the facts, move on, versus another doctor who sits and listens and understands and yes, conveys knowledge, but it doesn't know it all and doesn't necessarily tell a person what they have to do versus sharing decisions, shared decision making, things like that.
Difference between surgeons and internal medicine.
Sasha says the difference between a surgeon and somebody in internal medicine.
It's a stereotype, but like all stereotypes.
But it's Sasha's experience as well. Yeah. So her professional experience. Yeah, it's subjective.
I mean, one of the reasons, again, not to tell my story, but one of the reasons I went into geriatrics as a subset of internal medicine is I found that you did a lot more good, not by necessarily prescribing medicines, but by taking medications away and by listening and dealing with psychosocial issues versus chemical and biologic issues.
Thank you. Yeah. And then there's the people that we like to listen to. Think of the podcasts or the radio programs there's something soothing, healing in the voice itself. Not necessarily, I'm kind of moving on to another aspect of this, not necessarily the content, but it comes because I'm not thinking of a good example right now, but I don't, I'm not, I'm blanking on an example, but I know that sometimes I don't listen to a podcast because I find the voice of the person grating, or there's something in it that doesn't ring true to me, whatever. So there's something, the quality of the voice, and then the question is the quality of the voice connected to that person's integrity as well? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm raising that as a question. Did anybody ever tell you in your radiophonic days that your voice comforts them?
Yeah, yeah, people react to the quality of my voice, which is nothing I'm responsible for, but people do react to it and feel that, yeah, so I've gotten comments on it.
Or
Absolutely.
maybe it is, maybe you are responsible for it. Maybe it does have to do with your integrity and your wisdom.
I'd like to think so, but it's an accident. But I'm just very struck by what Les just said. And yeah, and I think his experiences and what he relates, it just does amplify that phrase you bolded, that the speech of the wise is healing.
Okay, anybody else? Yes, Harold.
This conversation is making me think of an actor, maybe people remember him or know him here, named Keith David, who is frequently used as a narrator for documentaries. I've heard his voice in documentaries. I'm thinking specifically about documentaries on religion in general. I think the Bible, and he just has a wonderful voice, and it's not booming or loud. It's deep, and it's just it's a soothing voice, and he's used a great deal for narration.
Okay. Fox brings up a poetic issue of the Hebrew marpeh, because not linguistically, but from an assonance point of view, is connected to rafa, softness as well. And this is maybe also leads another aspect of the or side of the shade of the meeting here is the language of wise people is soft. It's spoken softly as well. Lashon chachamim benachat nishma'im. Where is that from, Sasha? Is that rabbinic? Is that children? Okay. All the children in nursery schools in Israel are taught Lashon chachamim benachat. I think, right? Lashon chachamim benachat nishma'im. The word. You don't know that? All the kids learned that when they were growing up. Yeah. The words of the wise are heard with softness, or heard in a gentle way.
Mm-hmm.
No, you find it? Yeah. Oh, from Kohelet. Okay, it's from Ecclesiastes. Okay, all right. Should we do the last one? Richard, 24, 28, because you're such an influencer.
Okay. The hand of the diligent wields authority. The negligent are held in subjugation. If there is anxiety in a man's mind, let it quash him and turn it into joy with a good word. A righteous man gives his friend direction, but the way of the wicked leads astray. A negligent man never has game to roast. A diligent man has precious wealth. The road of righteousness leads to life. By way of its path, there is no death.
The words that stood out for me because of the rhyming, the third and fourth line, the second couplet. Daga belev ish isachena, V'davar tov yismachena. And so I found a little Talmudic debate over what that might mean in the Babylonian Talmud. Dan, you want to read the bottom one?
If there is a care in the heart of a man, let him bend it. Yashchena. Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Asi. One said he should force it, Yashchena, out of his mind. And one said he should tell Yisichena, his troubles to others.
Right. So putting it out of your mind or sharing it with others. So the beautiful part about the debate here is, of course, they're both right, right? We utilize both of those strategies in dealing with our anxiety. Yeah, denial. Not all denial is bad. We have to do a lot of denial to get by in life. Certainly, at any given time, we can't deal with everything. On the other hand, sharing it with others, whether it's with a therapist or with our partners or whatever it might be, is also a good strategy. All right. Anything else on this section before we sign off?
Last two lines of the couplet remind me of we've had that twice before. Sedekah Tatzil Mavet. Saying the same thing.
Yeah, and you know what? It's even more that tzedakah tatzil mimavet. I'm working on that for the one of the presentations with the other group. Is more than just the two times we've run into so far. It's very common. So I want to look at that more. But yes, the same idea. Baruch tzedakah chaim. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like Les says, it's oscillating between it's in your interest to do what is that which is just and right, and it has nothing to do with God, unless of course life here is eternal life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Lots of good fortune cookie couplets this month.
Right. Yes. So Les and I did a little bit of research into the fortune cookie thing. It turns out there already is a kosher fortune cookie company, and they have bits of Torah in their fortune, but not necessarily from Mishlei, from Proverbs. So I have a feeling that they probably have a corner on that rather narrow market of kosher fortune cookies with Jewish wisdom in them.
And there's lots of New Testament fortune cookies also.
Yeah. I think it was the kosher company that has the New Testament, right?
Yeah, I think they have a sideline.
A sideline, yeah. The question is, maybe they were a New Testament company and they said, well, let's branch it out, and then said, well, then we'll be kosher. Hard to know, but it's certainly a good topic for a paper at a university someplace.
Or a
All right,
fundraiser.
everybody.
Or a fundraiser. Have you thought of doing that for Or Hamid Bara, a fortune cookie fundraiser?
Well, we just need the people to make the cookies. I'll come up with the wisdom. Okay, you come up with the cookies.
I'm not a baker.
Okay. All right. Okay, everybody, be well, live with wisdom, and yeah, and if you're watching too much TV, especially what's on the news, especially last night, then go back to this and get back on the right track.
Discipline.
Discipline.
Musar.
All right. Be well. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.